I just realized I've never talked about Periphery on this channel, so let's change that. Last week, Periphery put out 2 singles from their upcoming album, Periphery V, Djent is Not a Genre. Now, I'm not a huge fan of meme titles for songs or albums, but these 2 singles are really great. And when I heard they were dropping some singles, I wanted to take a listen to them and see if maybe there was something I wanted to do a deep dive analysis into. And of these 2 singles, Zagreus really connected with me right away. Now, I'm more of a casual fan of Periphery, but this song touches on a lot of my favorite elements of their sound. I really enjoy this super heavy Periphery. A couple of things before I dive into this. This is not a guitar lesson. I've tabbed out some of the riffs and I'll talk about them as they relate to the overall song, but if you're looking for a guitar tutorial, this isn't that. This analysis is focused on the song as a whole, the rhythms, harmonic choices, melodies, structure, dynamics, all of that. My goal with analyzing these is to help you understand these concepts so you can put them into your own music. As I mentioned, I'm not a huge Periphery fanboy, and I know there's lots of callbacks in this song to other Periphery songs, specifically from the album Juggernaut. You can let me know what those are in the comments, but I'm just going to talk about this song as it relates to itself. Before I get into this marathon of an analysis, please subscribe and hit the bell notification. If you're a fan of prog, this is the place for you. So let's do it. First off, the guitar tuning of this song is a 6-string in G, G, C, F, A, D tuning. Basically a full step down with a low string tuned down to G, creating an octave between the 2 low strings. A really cool tuning. None of my 6 strings are set up to be tuned that low, so I've put my 7 string in that tuning and I'm just not going to play the E string. I won't really go over the riffs in depth, but I'll play a few of them. Just be aware that if you want to do this properly, you're going to need to do it on a 6 string. Almost the entirety of this song is in 12/8, except for the metric modulation at the end of the song, which I'll get to later. 12/8 is most commonly divided as 4 groups of 3 or 4 compound beats. Compound beats are beats with 3 notes inside of them. This could also be thought of as 4/4 with triplets, but because this never goes away from that compound feel, it's easier and cleaner to write this in 12/8. I did a big lesson on compound meter last year using the music of Opeth to explain it. There were some eggs and some forced comedy, but if you want to get a little more of a handle on compound meter, go give that a watch. After a monster 1-bar drum fill, the song kicks off with this rhythm. This rhythmic motif makes up a large portion of the heavy riffs in the song. First, listen to just the cymbals and snare here. There are clearly 4 beats here with a snare backbeat on beat 3. This basic backbeat continues through most of the song, providing that straightforward groove while these crazy rhythms happen underneath. And this is the foundation of that Meshuggah or Djent sound. Odd patterns against a straight backbeat. The pattern of this rhythm goes as follows as eighth notes. 6, 6, 5, 6, 4, and this equals 27. The phrase here is a total of 8 bars of 12/8 or 96 eighth notes total. This phrase plays 3 times, 27 times 3 equals 81, and that leaves a remainder of 15 eighth notes. To get that remainder, you play the first 2 sixes of the pattern again, and then a group of 3, and all of that totals 96. The smaller patterns of 6, 5, and 4 are divided like this. The 6s are groups of 2, 2, 2 with 16th notes on the first group of 2. The 5 is 2, 1, 2 with 16th notes on the first group of 2. And the 4 is 2, 2 with a gallop on the first group of 2. There's a melodic element to this pattern as well. The last 2 in each of these smaller chunks are accompanied by a different higher note that alternate against the low A flat on the first fret of the G string. It goes B flat, A flat, B flat, B natural. That means each of the smaller 6/6, 5/6, 4 patterns are accompanied by a different note, and this melodic pattern lines up with the rhythmic pattern. It's 5 notes long, and the rhythmic pattern has 5 chunks to it. My guess is the melodic pattern helped inform the rhythmic pattern in the writing process. This is just chromatic, it's not coming from a key or a scale. A lot of this song is rooted on G, which is to be expected because that's the open low string in this tuning, but this opening riff is hanging out on A flat, and you could think of the A flat as maybe being the flat 2 in the key of G, but really this is just chromatic. To simplify this whole rhythm a bit, this odd pattern of 27 just keeps repeating until the end of the 8-bar phrase, and then the pattern starts over again. This pattern of 27 lasts 9 beats in 12/8. So it starts on the first beat of measure 1, the second beat of measure 3, the third beat of measure 5, and the fourth beat of measure 7. So these rhythms play off the straight backbeat a little bit differently each time. That's what creates the syncopation for these type of grooves. You can bang your head to the straightforward backbeat, but those offbeat accents are providing that extra groovy syncopation. Meshuggah has built basically their whole sound off of this, and Misha and Periphery are obviously heavily influenced by this. I spent a lot of time on this intro rhythm, but as we'll see, this becomes a core motif in the song that happens over and over. In fact, 2 variations of it happen right away. This is a variation on the intro riff. The rhythmic patterns, the notes, and the backbeat on beat 3 are all exactly the same as the intro, but the 16th notes at the beginning of each group of 6, 5, and 4 get cut out, leaving a rest at the beginning of each of these. This is a fantastic writing tool. Instead of going to a whole new riff or rhythm, Periphery makes a variation on the same riff that sounds less frantic by cutting out those super fast 16th notes. I'm all about developing ideas and creating variations. This is a great way to tie together a longer, complex piece of music. The third riff takes a similar approach. This riff is the same as riff number 2 in the drums, but in the guitars, 2 palm-muted 8th notes get added in where the 16th notes played in the original riff, and where the rest happened in riff number 2. Once again, another simple variation that helps keep this riff fresh. One other thing to note here is the rhythmic phrasing in the harsh vocals. For the most part in the song, Spencer is lining up his vocals with the overriding 12/8 pulse more than he is with the odd patterns of the riff. The big exception here is the line "pay for it," which hits right with the riff. Focusing the vocal rhythm more on the steady pulse of the groove adds weight to that pulse and helps the listener to latch onto it. Vocals, especially harsh vocals, are a great tool for adding rhythmic intensity to a riff. There's a quick 1-bar fill out of this riff into the first melodic section of the song. Here it finally moves away from that opening rhythm and the low A flat. This is what I think of as a Notey riff, which Periphery are big fans of. They're these super involved moving riffs with lots of runs, and these are a nice contrast to the more rhythmically focused Meshuggah-esque riffs. This riff is rooted on the low G note, and it all comes from G Phrygian dominant. Phrygian dominant is the 5th mode of harmonic minor, and it's a go-to sound in metal if you want to sound exotic. This is a really popular metal scale, and it's one I've covered multiple times on this channel. Spencer's melody here is also completely from this scale. And I really like some of these larger interval jumps in this melody. It's easy for melodies to always move in stepwise motion or up and down a scale. But we have some cool interval jumps here that are very ear-catching. There's a fourth right off the bat, and another fourth, and there's one more fourth right there. Very cool. Rhythmically, this is much more straight ahead with everything lining up on the downbeats. Once again, a nice contrast to that main rhythmic motif. Speaking of the main rhythm, from here it goes back to the main rhythmic motif and then to the second variation with the palm muted eighth notes.
Searching for something beyond this social condition. Feel the power and give our permission. Over again and again. Social condition can deal with submission.
The difference here is in the note choice. Now the low notes are G's instead of A flats like earlier. And the 5-note melodic pattern is this: B, A flat, B flat, G, and A flat. And this is coming from a G half-whole diminished scale. A half step, whole step, and another half step. And this is another great sound for heavy riffing. Up to this point, that opening rhythmic motif has been the foundation for 5 different riffs, and not one of them has been done exactly the same way. Expanding an idea like this to its fullest potential is a great way to write prog. It helps everything to feel less random. There's a 1-bar transition into this super heavy riff. The transition is basically just a G minor chord strummed in the guitars. This heavy riff does a very simple but effective polyrhythm. Against the 12/8, which has been grouped as 3 groups of 4 so far, the riff plays 6 groups of 2. So the pulse is happening every 3 notes and the riff is happening every 2 notes, and this creates a 3 against 2 polyrhythm. So here's the beat: 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a... This is the simplest polyrhythm that there is, and one of the reasons 12/8 is so cool is that you can put this polyrhythm inside of it, and it's going to line up on the downbeat of every measure. There's also this shift from blast beats to a heavy halftime groove. I'm a big fan of blast beats, especially when used sparingly like this. This riff has almost a black metalish type feel to me, which is really cool. Just like the last riff, this is using a G diminished sound, which leads really nicely to the chorus. First off, this chorus is great and super catchy. It's a nice contrast to the heavy riffs to have such a memorable chorus. This is something that Periphery is great at. There's a pop element to their sound from time to time, which for me doesn't always work, but here it's great. The chorus is in the key of D minor, which is closely related to the key of G minor. I'll talk in a second about that diminished sound that led into the chorus, but here's the chord progression from the chorus. Keep in mind I'm in standard tuning, so if you're playing in the tuning from the song, everything will look 2 frets up, but this is how it's sounding. D minor, E diminished 7, F major, B minor 7 flat 5 or B half diminished, B flat major 7, A flat major, D flat major, C sharp diminished 7. It starts on the root note with the chord D minor, and then the bass walks up to E and then F. The chords here are E diminished 7th and F major. The diminished 7th has the notes E, G, B flat, and C sharp. The C sharp is the leading tone. The leading tone is the note that's a half step below the root. In this case, D is the root. So C sharp, 1 half step below, is the leading tone. And this is coming from harmonic minor. D harmonic minor looks like this. has that note C sharp. So over that chord, you have that sound. And then to F major. So next is this chord, B minor 7 flat 5 or B half diminished. D is our root, and this chord is coming from D Dorian. That B is the major 6 in the key, which is a Dorian sound in a minor key to have a major 6th interval. You could also think of this as maybe being a chromatic movement down to B flat, because it goes from this chord then to B flat major 7. It's pretty common in a minor key to have the 6th chord, which here would be B flat, move up a half step. You could continue that even further, you know, chromatically back up to the root note. Here it's resolving down, but I'm kind of thinking of this as an embellishment of that B flat major chord, which then resolves to the B flat. It moves down to that B flat major 7, which has all the same notes as the B minor 7 flat 5, except the root note is a half step down. And these two chords work really well together. And then from here it's going to modulate to the key of A flat. From here it goes A flat major to D flat major. And this is a straight up modulation to a new key with no setup. The melody here does help because the melody is singing the root notes of the A flat and D flat chord, which helps to make this key change a little bit stronger. Then to get back to D minor, it moves to a C sharp diminished 7th chord. This is the leading tone chord in D harmonic minor, which is going to lead your ear right back to D minor. And the D flat chord from before that has the same root note as C sharp diminished 7th. D flat and C sharp are the same note. That's why this transition works well. So let me play this whole key change part. We got B flat, key change, diminished. Pretty nifty. I mentioned the diminished sound that led into the chorus. A C sharp diminished 7th would be spelled C sharp, E, G, B flat, and a G diminished 7th would be G, B flat, D flat, E. Notice how these have all the same notes, and that's because a diminished 7th chord is a symmetrical chord, and all of the intervals within it are a minor third or 3 frets on the guitar. If I play 3 frets up and down on the guitar, that's spelling out a diminished 7th chord. I can do that with full chords too. So we're using this C sharp diminished 7th to lead back to D minor within the chorus, but before the chorus hits we have G diminished 7th. But because it's sharing all the same notes, it's going to function basically the same way, as a really smooth move into D minor. The melody here is fantastic as well, really focused on landing on chord tones. Starts on the 5th of D minor, then the flat 5 of E diminished 7th, 3rd of F, flat 5 of B minor 7 flat 5, the 3rd of B flat major 7, the root notes of A flat and D flat, and the flat 5 of C sharp diminished 7. So it's landing on chord tones with every single chord change, which helps to connect this chord progression together, which isn't super crazy, but it does go outside of staying in one key. Instrumentally, everything gets much simpler here, pounding out chords with a simpler drum groove. All of this is helping the vocal stand out, and it adds even more contrast between the chorus and the rest of the song. Spencer's vocal delivery here is really great as well, super intense and powerful. From here, it's right back to that opening rhythmic motif, this time again with different notes in the guitar, and they're mostly coming from D harmonic minor, but the vocal melody is right from D minor pentatonic, except for one place where he sings a B flat. But the melody is mostly pentatonic in nature. As I mentioned, this riff is mostly from D harmonic minor, but there's a B in there as well. Maybe a little bit more of that Dorian flavor from the chorus. Basically, this is the intro riff, but it just moves around more harmonically. D to C sharp, to B flat, to A, to G, and then back up. And then there's higher intervals of a third, or I guess a tenth in this case, on top of that. Basically just shifting that shape around through the scale. This is in D though instead of G like the earlier riffs that use this same rhythm. I do like the addition of clean vocals. Up to this point it's been just harsh vocals over this rhythmic motif, so having the clean vocals changes it up a bit. There's also some ambient lead guitars here in true Djent fashion. From here it's to another Notey riff in Phrygian dominant, this time in D Phrygian dominant, though the riff does have some half-whole diminished sounds as well, and the melody Spencer is singing is coming right from D Phrygian dominant. This is the first section where the drums go to double time with backbeats on 2 and 4, which is a nice change and it helps to ramp up the energy. I love the vocal interplay between harsh and clean vocals as well. It's cool to change them up mid-phrase like this, it keeps the listener on their toes. Next it goes to another super heavy blast beat riff. This is similar to the riff before the first chorus. It's half blast beats, half halftime, it's rooted on G, and it leads to the chorus with a diminished sound. This riff is really fun to play. It's straight eighth notes with shifting accents. So they start on the downbeat, the accents. And in the second measure, they're on the third eighth note of the beat. And in the third measure, they're on the second eighth note of the beat. And it's really cool because every single measure is slightly different. Looking at the structure of both of the verses, they're fairly similar. A couple of riffs based off the main rhythmic motif, a Notey riff in Phrygian dominant with clean vocals, and a super heavy riff in G leading to the chorus. So while the individual parts are different and the first verse is slightly longer, the overall flow of these verses is similar in how they work towards the chorus. The second chorus is the same as the first chorus, and it's good to have some more exact repetition in a long song like this, especially if it's a main melodic hook. And this chorus doesn't come back again later in the song, so having it be the same both times makes sense. Then there's a 1-bar transition to the solo with some woes over top. The chords here are C sharp diminished 7 and A. Whoa, to D minor. The solo has a modified version of the chorus chord progression underneath it. It goes D minor, E diminished 7th, F, B flat major 7, C sharp diminished, G minor, F with C in the bass, or like F add 2 with C in the bass, and C sharp diminished 7th. The beginning is the same as the chorus, but it doesn't do the modulation to A flat that the chorus did. It stays in D minor. And it's kind of going between D natural minor and D harmonic minor. So natural minor, harmonic minor, natural minor, harmonic minor, natural minor, harmonic minor. This is the first part of the song that comes down dynamically. The heavy rhythm guitars go away and there are clean guitars picking the chords underneath the solo. Up to this point it's been 4 minutes of super loud, intense music, and this adds a much needed break from that. It's also nice to have the rhythm guitars lay out here because it allows even more focus on the solo, and the solo itself is well constructed and it sounds really great. Now, I won't do a lesson on that in this video, but here's a video of me playing the solo with the tabs on screen. Lots of cool licks in this one. Now it's on to the bridge, where it comes down even more dynamically.
Will it ever be? Will we ever live in honesty? 'Cause we're falling apart, you and I. Will it ever be?
The main difference between the bridge and the rest of the song is how 12/8 is treated. For the whole song up to this point, it's been 4 beats of 3, and here it's felt as 6 groups of 2. So really it's 6/4 here, not 12/8, but both of these time signatures have the same amount of eighth notes. This part is a very Protest the Hero vibe to me, another band I should definitely cover on this channel at some point. The song gets much simpler here, and that's really effective because of how busy and complex everything before this part has been, and that contrast makes this section even more powerful. Harmonically it goes B flat, D minor 7, C, G minor 7 to F over A. It's a very simple progression, all from D natural minor, and there's another really great melody here, once again targeting a lot of the chord tones.
Will it ever be? Will we ever live in honesty? 'Cause we're falling apart, you and I. Will it ever be?
When the full band enters, the progression changes just slightly to B flat, D minor 7, C, B half diminished or B minor 7 flat 5, G minor 7 to F over A. So it sneaks in that B half diminished from the chorus here. It's a nice little callback to the chorus. Cause we're falling apart, you and I. And I'm mostly hearing that B in the bass guitar, but it's definitely there. A nice little change to the progression. Then that last chord progression continues as a new melody enters and the drums go to a cool tom-based groove, building to the climax of this section where everything goes back to full volume. I like the way this whole bridge section builds up to this climax, slowly adding instruments and getting louder. And there are those woes from before the solo that re-enter here in the vocals, and I really like that little pause right before the final climactic section. At the end of the bridge, there's a couple of overdriven guitars that play the bridge chord progression again quietly, and then there's this big fake out fill in the drums. And then it goes to the final breakdown. This starts with the riff that played right after the first chorus with the added ambient guitars on top, and then it goes to the real craziness. This is a metric modulation, and it's not quite as insane as it seems at first. Up to this point, this rhythmic motif has only been happening in 12/8, treated as 4 groups of 3. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And here it's going to go from groupings of 3 to groupings of 4, but that faster 8th note pulse is going to stay the same. Basically, this makes it feel like it's slowing down because you have beats that are 1/8 note longer. And because it's now felt with 4 notes per beat, the guys in Periphery treat this like 4/4. So it modulates from 12/8 to 4/4, but the 8th note pulse stays the same. Now I might actually write it like this, where the 8th note becomes the new 16th note, mostly because that keeps the snare backbeat on beat 3 in the new 4/4, but you could write it the other way as well. The main thing is that the pulse stays the same, and it's now grouped in 4s. The rhythm of the riff itself doesn't change, just the pulse over top of it. It's still playing that 27 note pattern, and the guitars are playing the notes from the very first riff in the song. This phrase is 8 bars long in 4/4, which has 64 eighth notes total, so this pattern won't play as many times as it did when it was in 12/8. It plays twice, which gets you to 54, and then the first 10 notes of the pattern play again to get to 64. This is the exact same approach that happened in the opening riff in 12/8, but this time in 4/4. Then it moves to one final riff. This one starts in 4/4 and then modulates back to the original 12/8. Here's the pattern, 6-6-6-7, 6-6-4-7. Which totals 48. This riff happens exactly the same in 4/4 and 12/8. In 4/4 it's 6 bars long, and in 12/8 it's 4 bars long. This metric modulation is the exact reverse of the earlier one, moving from groups of 4 back to groups of 3. And it ends on the second eighth note of the last beat of the final bar of the pattern. Then there are a few chord hits into the ending orchestral section. These hits line up with 4/4 in the modulated tempo, but really they function as just big hits into the ending. Now, I won't be covering this ending orchestral section as it functions as a transition into the next song, but it's really cool and I love the epic video game vibe here. And I heard someone comment that this is actually something from a video game, which makes total sense. Looking at the overall structure of the song, at the core you have verse 1, chorus, verse 2, chorus, solo, bridge, and then ending with a breakdown. Now, of course, inside of some of these sections there's multiple parts, especially in the verses where there's 5 or 6 different things happening. But that's the overall structure of the song. And this is a fairly common prog song structure to have 2 verses and choruses and then never go back to the chorus again. So there you have it, a full musical breakdown of Zagreus by Periphery. This was a beast to tackle, but I really like this song and it gets me pumped to hear the rest of the album. What are your favorite Periphery tracks? I'd be curious to know what some of you pick. And if you enjoyed this video, subscribe, hit the bell notification, like, comment, share. Till next time, stay proggy.